Long before the world learned to associate the name Musk with rockets, electric cars, and ambitious dreams of Mars, there was a woman quietly shaping a mindset that would later astonish the world. Her life did not unfold like a fairy tale, and her wisdom was not born from comfort or certainty. It came from resilience, patience, and an unwavering belief that life is not meant to be lived safely on the sidelines. The lesson hidden in her journey is subtle, almost easy to miss, yet once understood, it has the power to transform how you see struggle, ambition, and your own worth. She learned early that life does not wait for you to feel ready. It moves forward regardless of fear, doubt, or hesitation. Instead of asking for permission, she chose to act. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, she worked with what she had. This is one of the quiet truths many people overlook. Confidence is not something you acquire before action, it is something that grows because of action. When circumstances were uncertain, when the future felt unclear, she didn't pause her life until reassurance arrived. She stepped forward anyway. That decision alone separates those who live fully from those who merely dream. There were times when life forced her to start again, not once but many times. New countries, new careers, new identities, and new responsibilities arrived without warning. Each restart could have been seen as failure, proof that something had gone wrong. Instead, she treated each beginning as evidence that she was still alive, still capable, still growing. The secret lesson here is powerful. Starting over is not a sign of weakness, it is a declaration of courage. Every time you begin again, you prove to yourself that you are not defined by what didn't work, but by your willingness to keep moving. She refused to believe that age sets limits on relevance or ambition. While society quietly suggests that certain doors close as years pass, she walked through new ones anyway. She studied, modeled, built a career, and reinvented herself repeatedly when others might have chosen comfort over challenge. The deeper truth is not about age at all, it's about permission. She never waited for the world to tell her it was acceptable to want more. She gave herself permission. That alone can change a life. Most people live trapped not by external barriers, but by the invisible rules they never question. Fear was never absent from her life. It was present, loud, and sometimes overwhelming. But fear was not allowed to vote. She acknowledged it without letting it decide. This distinction matters more than most people realize. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the refusal to obey it. When you stop seeing fear as a stop sign and start seeing it as a signal that growth is nearby, everything shifts. Fear becomes a compass pointing toward the life you are meant to live, not a wall blocking your path. she also understood something rare about hardship: it teaches you faster than comfort ever will. Hard years sharpen instincts, clarify values, and strip away illusions. Instead of resenting difficulty, she used it as training. Every challenge became a lesson in self-reliance, adaptability, and endurance. This is where many people lose their way. They see pain as proof that life is unfair or that they are unlucky, when in reality pain is often the price of becoming stronger than your circumstances. The lesson is not to seek suffering, but to stop wasting it. There was no obsession with perfection. She moved forward even when things were messy, incomplete, or uncertain. Waiting to be perfect is one of the most socially accepted forms of procrastination. She knew that progress beats perfection every time. The willingness to be imperfect is what allows momentum to build. Momentum creates confidence, and confidence changes everything. This mindset alone can free you from years of hesitation and self-doubt. Another quiet truth woven through her life is the importance of self-respect. She did not measure her worth by applause, approval, or external validation. She valued dignity over popularity and substance over appearances. In a world that constantly pushes people to seek validation from others, she chose to become her own source of approval. This is a deeply liberating decision. When you stop outsourcing your self-worth, you gain a level of emotional independence that makes you unshakable. She also believed that responsibility is empowering, not burdensome. Taking ownership of your life, your choices, and your future is not a punishment, it is a privilege. Blame might feel comforting in the short term, but it robs you of power. Responsibility gives it back. When you accept that your life is yours to shape, you stop waiting to be saved and start building. That shift changes how you see obstacles. They become problems to solve, not excuses to surrender. There was an understanding that success is rarely loud while it is being built. The most meaningful growth happens quietly, far from attention and applause. She worked when no one was watching, trusted the process, and allowed time to do its work. In an age obsessed with instant results and public recognition, this patience is revolutionary. The lesson here is simple but profound. What you are becoming matters more than what people see right now. She never taught that life would be easy. She taught that it would be worth it if you stayed curious, courageous, and committed. She understood that struggle does not mean you are failing, it often means you are exactly where growth happens. This reframing can change how you experience your hardest moments. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What is this teaching me?" Perhaps the most life-changing lesson hidden in her journey is the belief that you are more capable than you think, especially when life demands more of you than you feel ready to give. Strength often reveals itself only after it is required. If you wait to feel strong before acting, you may never act at all. She acted first, and strength followed. She modeled a quiet optimism grounded in realism. Not blind positivity, but a deep trust that effort compounds over time. That showing up consistently, even imperfectly, creates opportunities that talent alone never could. This belief removes the pressure to be extraordinary every day. It replaces it with a far more powerful habit: persistence. Her life also teaches that you don't need to have everything figured out to move forward. Clarity often comes after action, not before it. Many people delay decisions because they want certainty, but certainty is rare and often an illusion. She moved with faith in her ability to adapt, not in her ability to predict the future. That trust and adaptability is far more reliable than any plan. There is also a lesson about humility woven into her story. She learned, she listened, and she stayed open. Confidence did not turn into arrogance. Success did not erase curiosity. This balance allowed her to grow continuously rather than becoming rigid or defensive. When you remain a student of life, you never become obsolete. She understood the importance of modeling behavior rather than preaching it. The values she lived by were visible in her actions, not her words. This is why her influence runs deep. People may forget advice, but they remember example. This is a reminder that how you live speaks louder than what you say, especially to those who are watching more closely than you realize. Another subtle but powerful lesson is that dignity in adversity leaves a lasting impact. Even in difficult moments, she chose grace over bitterness. Bitterness may feel justified, but it corrodes the person carrying it. Grace, on the other hand, preserves inner peace and self-respect. Choosing grace does not mean ignoring injustice. It means refusing to let it define you. She also embraced the idea that life has seasons. Some seasons are for building, some for learning, some for resting, and some for letting go. Resisting the season you're in only creates unnecessary suffering. When you accept that not every phase is meant to look impressive, you stop judging yourself unfairly. Growth becomes more natural, less forced. There is a quiet strength in knowing when to endure and when to pivot. She did both. She endured when endurance was required, and she changed direction when staying would have meant stagnation. Wisdom lies in knowing the difference. This discernment comes not from overthinking, but from self-awareness and honesty. Her story also reminds us that influence does not always look like authority. Sometimes it looks like consistency, kindness, and courage lived out over time. You may never know whose life you are shaping simply by how you handle your own. This realization adds meaning to even the smallest choices. One of the most liberating ideas reflected in her life is that you do not owe the world a smaller version of yourself. You are allowed to want more, to change, to grow, and to surprise people. Staying small to make others comfortable is a quiet form of self-betrayal. She chose expansion instead. She did not romanticize struggle, but she respected it. She understood that ease is often built on years of unseen effort. This perspective prevents envy. When you understand that success has a cost, you stop comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You focus instead on your own path. There is also a lesson about gratitude that runs beneath everything. Gratitude not as denial of hardship, but as acknowledgement of survival. Gratitude for lessons learned, strength gained, and the chance to keep going. This form of gratitude does not weaken ambition, it fuels it. Perhaps the most transformative takeaway is this: your circumstances do not get to decide your ceiling. They may influence your starting point, but they do not define your destination. She lived as proof that resilience can outpace privilege, that mindset can outlast misfortune, and that belief in yourself can be built even when no one else believes yet. In the end, the secret lesson is not about raising a visionary or being connected to greatness. It is about becoming someone who refuses to give up on herself. No matter how many times life demands a restart. It is about choosing courage over comfort, growth over fear, and responsibility over excuses. When you internalize this lesson, your life changes not overnight, but forever. You stop waiting for permission. You stop fearing reinvention. You stop underestimating what is possible when you decide to keep going, and perhaps that is the most life-changing realization of all. You don't need a perfect story, a flawless past, or ideal conditions to live a remarkable life. You only need the courage to begin, the humility to learn, and the resilience to continue. Everything else can be built along the way. What makes this lesson even more powerful is how quietly it unfolds over time. There is no dramatic announcement, no single moment where everything suddenly changes. Instead, transformation happens in the ordinary choices made repeatedly, especially when no one is applauding. She showed that greatness is often built in silence, through consistency rather than spectacle. This is where many people lose patience. They want proof that their effort matters before they commit fully. Her life suggests the opposite: commit first, and meaning will reveal itself later. She understood that resilience is not something you either have or don't have. It is something you practice. Each time life demanded more than felt comfortable, she stretched herself just enough to meet it. Over time, what once felt impossible became normal. This is how strength is built, not through dramatic leaps, but through steady expansion. The lesson here is subtle but essential. Your capacity grows in response to responsibility. Avoiding responsibility keeps you small. Accepting it forces you to evolve. Another truth reflected in her journey is that comparison is one of the most draining habits a person can adopt. She did not measure her progress against others. She measured it against who she was yesterday. This freed her from the constant pressure to perform or impress. When you stop competing with everyone around you, you regain energy to invest in your own growth. Life becomes less about proving and more about becoming. She also demonstrated that survival itself can be a form of success. In periods when ambition had to pause and endurance took center stage, she did not see those years as wasted. She saw them as foundational. There are seasons when your only job is to hold things together. That does not make you weak, it makes you human. Recognizing this prevents unnecessary self-judgment and allows compassion to coexist with ambition. There was a clear understanding that confidence does not come from never failing. It comes from knowing that failure will not destroy you. Once you internalize that truth, fear loses much of its power. She moved forward not because she was certain of success, but because she trusted herself to recover if things went wrong. This kind of self-trust is far more valuable than optimism. She also embraced the idea that learning never ends. Curiosity kept her adaptable. When circumstances changed, she did not cling to outdated identities or skills. She evolved. This flexibility is one of the most underrated forms of intelligence. The world changes quickly, and those who survive and thrive are not the strongest or the smartest, but the most adaptable. Her life quietly challenges the belief that your past defines your future. Mistakes, wrong turns, and difficult chapters were not treated as permanent labels. They were chapters, not conclusions. This distinction matters. When you see your life as a story still being written, you stop letting previous pages dictate the ending. She also modeled emotional discipline. Feelings were acknowledged but not allowed to control decisions. This does not mean suppressing emotions, it means understanding them without surrendering to them. Emotional discipline creates clarity, especially during chaos. It allows you to respond instead of react, to choose instead of collapse, Another powerful undercurrent in her life is the idea that independence is deeply connected to self-belief. Depending entirely on external validation or rescue weakens inner authority. She cultivated the ability to stand on her own, emotionally and mentally. This does not mean rejecting help, but it does mean not outsourcing your sense of worth or direction. She understood that courage often looks ordinary from the outside. It looks like showing up tired, like continuing when motivation fades, like choosing integrity when shortcuts are tempting. These small acts of courage compound over time, shaping character in ways that dramatic moments never could. There is also an important lesson about patience. Not passive waiting, but active patience, the kind that works, learns, and prepares while trusting time to reveal results. She allowed life to unfold without forcing outcomes prematurely. This patience reduced desperation and allowed better decisions. She recognized that identity is fluid. You are not locked into who you were at 20, 30, or even 50. Reinvention is not betrayal of your past, it is respect for your potential. This belief frees people from living lives that no longer fit them. Her story also reminds us that kindness toward yourself is not indulgence, it is survival. Self-criticism may feel productive, but it often drains energy and clarity. She treated herself with the same fairness she extended to others. This self-respect created stability even during unstable times. There is a quiet message about boundaries woven through her life as well. Knowing when to say no, when to step back, and when to protect your energy is essential for long-term resilience. Overgiving without replenishment leads to burnout. Not virtue, she did not chase happiness as a constant state. She understood that life includes discomfort, uncertainty, and loss. Instead of demanding happiness, she focused on meaning. Meaning can coexist with difficulty. In fact, it often grows because of it. Another understated lesson is that visibility should never be the goal. Substance should. Attention comes and goes, but character remains. By focusing on who she was becoming rather than how she was perceived, she built a life that could withstand scrutiny and change. She also lived with an understanding that hope is a discipline. It is not naive optimism, but a choice to believe that effort matters even when evidence is scarce. Hope kept her moving when outcomes were unclear. Perhaps one of the most empowering ideas reflected in her life is that you do not need to be fearless to live boldly. You only need to value growth more than comfort. Comfort keeps you safe, growth makes you alive. Her journey shows that influence is not always intentional. Sometimes it is simply the byproduct of living honestly and courageously. Others observe, absorb, and learn without you ever realizing it. This gives weight to everyday choices. She also demonstrated that strength and softness are not opposites. You can be resilient without being hardened. You can be ambitious without being ruthless. Balance is possible, and it is powerful. There is a reminder here that life does not owe you clarity before you act. Often, clarity is earned through motion. Waiting too long for certainty can quietly turn into regret. She understood that discipline creates freedom. Structure, responsibility, and commitment may feel restrictive, but they create stability from which creativity and confidence can grow. Her life teaches that setbacks are not signals to stop, but invitations to adjust. Flexibility keeps momentum alive even when plans fail. Ultimately, the continuation of this lesson is simple yet demanding. Live as though your future self is watching and thanking you for not giving up. Every small decision made with courage and integrity becomes a gift to that future version of you. And maybe that is why this lesson feels so life-changing. It does not promise ease. It promises agency. It reminds you that no matter where you are starting from, you are allowed to keep becoming. You are allowed to rebuild. You are allowed to outgrow old versions of yourself. And most importantly, you are allowed to believe that your best chapters may still be ahead, waiting for you to have the courage to write them. As the story draws toward its quiet conclusion, the lesson becomes less about her and more about you. That is how powerful truths work. They begin as someone else's experience and end as a mirror. Her life never argued that circumstances will suddenly become fair or that effort guarantees applause. What it revealed instead is something far more durable, that meaning is created, not granted. She lived with an awareness that time is the one resource that never replenishes. Because of this, she did not waste years waiting to feel worthy, ready, or approved. She moved while learning, learned while moving, and trusted herself enough to adjust along the way. This trust is something many people never develop. They wait for external confirmation before they allow themselves to fully live. Her example gently dismantles that habit. There was also an acceptance that life is rarely linear. Progress loops, stalls, and sometimes feels invisible. She did not panic when momentum slowed. She understood that rest, reflection, and recalibration are part of forward movement, not signs of failure. This understanding prevents burnout and keeps hope intact during quieter seasons. She knew that resilience does not mean carrying everything alone. Strength includes knowing when to lean on others without losing yourself. Independence and connection were not opposites in her life, they coexisted. This balance allowed her to stay grounded while remaining self-directed. One of the most overlooked lessons in her journey is how she related to uncertainty. Instead of demanding guarantees, she made peace with not knowing. This did not weaken her resolve, it strengthened it. When you stop requiring certainty, you gain flexibility. You stop freezing at crossroads and start choosing paths with confidence in your ability to navigate whatever comes next. She also lived as though dignity mattered more than outcomes. Even when results were uncertain, she chose to act in ways she could respect later. This creates a deep inner stability. When you can look back without regret over how you behaved, even difficult chapters feel worthwhile. There is something deeply grounding in the way she understood success. It was not a destination but a relationship with effort. As long as she was learning, growing, and staying true to her values, she considered herself successful. This definition removes the anxiety of constantly chasing milestones and replaces it with a sense of alignment. She did not ignore setbacks, but she did not dramatize them either. Problems were addressed, not magnified. This emotional moderation is rare and powerful. It keeps challenges proportional and prevents temporary difficulties from becoming permanent identities. Another quiet truth is how she treated opportunity. She did not wait for perfect invitations. She created openings through preparation and courage. When opportunities appeared, she was ready, not because she had predicted them, but because she had been building herself consistently. Her life also demonstrates that reinvention does not require burning everything down. Sometimes it simply requires choosing differently next time. Growth can be gentle. Change does not always have to be loud to be real. She understood that peace comes from living in alignment, not from avoiding difficulty. When your actions match your values, even hard days carry a sense of purpose. This alignment becomes an internal compass that steadies you through uncertainty. Perhaps the most lasting impression her story leaves is this: you do not need to become extraordinary to live an extraordinary life. You need to be honest, brave, and persistent. You need to respect yourself enough to keep going, especially when no one is watching. Her journey strips away the myth that life-changing lessons arrive in dramatic moments. Often, they are learned in repetition, in choosing to try again. To stand back up, to believe one more time. These choices shape character quietly and permanently. In the end, the lesson does not ask you to become someone else. It asks you to stop abandoning yourself. To stop shrinking your dreams to match your fears. To stop postponing your life for a future moment that may never feel perfect. It invites you to trust that growth is happening even when it feels slow, that strength is forming even when you feel tired, and that courage is present even when your voice shakes. And if there is one final truth her life whispers rather than shouts, it is this: no matter how many times life forces you to begin again, beginning again is still a victory. Every restart means you chose hope over resignation. Every step forward, however small, means you refuse to disappear. That is the real secret. Not fame, not success, but the quiet, stubborn decision to keep becoming.